When you're looking at a starter being ready to go, you want a lot of bubbles around here and on the bottom?
I usually, yeah, so I'm looking, what I like normally when I want to use it is as it's just starting to collapse. People have different like ideas of where they like it, and a lot of people now like a younger starter, so this is actually probably where a lot of people would, in the younger starter, like train would like it to be before it starts to get super sour. The only thing is that when you use it younger like that, I mean, it will definitely still leaven, but it's not as strong. Like it's not as active just because it doesn't have as much of the bacteria and yeast. Like when you get it on the back end, when it's actually starting to collapse or even collapsing, is when it has like the most active, the most fermentation going on.
But it also has a lot of acid, right? So you got to watch out for that.
That's why a lot of people like it younger, because it's less acidic and you get more lactic acid. As it goes further, you start to get more of the acetic acid, which is like basically that is vinegar, and that's where I agree that I'm going for more lactic acid. I like it on the younger end where it still smells like pretty sweet and fruity, more like a yogurt basically, compared to vinegar, you know.
Gotcha.
So this is definitely still on that sweet fruity end. It's a little young, but it'll work.
That's a sourdough starter, and this?
So this one's Poolish, which is just a preferment with commercial yeast. So this is more where like I would want it to be, where you can see it's fully risen. It hasn't started to like collapse in the container. You'll often see, like if it has collapsed a lot, you see it's like sitting down here, but you can see a mark on the side of the container where it was at that like highest point. But you start to see like lots of bubbles in the top and certain spots where it looks, I mean, it is literally collapsing. It's sort of starting to fall in on itself a little bit. And so that's like, you can see like right there is starting to collapse. And then as you like agitate it, it wants to fall a little bit more. But if it immediately falls, if it's like really, really fragile, that tends to be a little bit over fermented for what I like anyway. Just because the protein's broken down so much that's why it's so fragile. It doesn't have any strength anymore. And when you add like, especially doughs, our dough is pretty, it's relatively low inoculation with these two, but some doughs where there's a really high percentage of whatever, whether it's a starter or Poolish or Biga or anything, if you're adding a lot of pre-fermented flour and a lot of that flour is already broken down too far, then you're adding a lot of what should be giving strength to the dough that already is this spent protein, and it's like it's going to affect the overall protein structure in the
so would that make it like a weaker dough?
Yeah, and that's where, and like I was explaining this to Anthony when we mixed 2 days ago, because we did a mix 2 days ago and we did one 3 days ago, and the difference was really noticeable where one day, he's a huge Arsenal fan, so he had to go watch the Champions League match. So I was trying to wait for him to get back so we could mix together. And it had gone a little bit over that day, and it was really noticeable one day to the next how like the strength in the mixer, you could tell, like it just got stronger faster. It was looking smoother, shinier, more developed a lot sooner on the one that wasn't as far over. And then just when we were shaping, he was like it is a relatively wet dough for a pizza dough. And so for people who aren't as used to, I think a lot of people are used to shaping pizza dough that's like maybe in the mid 60s for hydration. When you're playing around a little higher up, it can be harder to like shape it and get structure without it being like feeling too sticky, but it felt even stickier with that more broken down levain.
Okay, that's fascinating, because I am playing with sourdough not even as like a leavening agent, but more so as a flavoring agent.
Totally.
And I was actually wondering the same thing, is like, can I use sourdough that's way overboard and just have a ton of like that flavor profile, but does it deteriorate my dough or like make it a worse product?
I mean, it definitely does, but I wouldn't say it necessarily has to make it a worse product. I think that's where there's a line that it depends on how much you're putting into the final dough.
Right.
And a smaller amount is not going to have as much of a negative effect on the structure. But sometimes adding spent, that's why for me, I prefer to use a spent Poolish than a levain, because the spent commercial yeast for me, especially if it's a smaller percentage, it's what helps you get like a thinner, crisper crust. Like the crust that I want, which has more of that like shattering component instead of being as like chewy and kind of toothy, breadier, if that makes sense. And for whatever reason, I don't like know the specific science behind it, but that happens more with like spent commercial yeast than it does with the wild yeast. And so I do find that this, I don't care as much if it's over. This one, if it's over, you start to get problems in the final dough.
Problems that it's like just not as strong?
Yeah, usually with gluten development, like so strength in the dough in that sense. It can also be less, like it's less active, so leavening is like going to be a little bit different. And I think if nothing else, it's not that it's worse, but it's just less consistent. So on a day-to-day basis, you have to pay a lot more attention. Or if for like a restaurant perspective, if I'm like trying to teach someone else how to do it and what to look for on a daily basis, it's just going to change a lot more. So if it's over, if it's at least consistently over, I can teach someone how it should look and what it should feel like. But if it's over some days and then not as much the other days and things like that, and it's sort of hard to judge that. I mean, honestly, like one of the best ways to try to judge it would be get a pH meter and like literally check the pH every time. What you could do is just like, you know, you get into this point of like how many steps do we want to take to make pizza, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure like there are places that would do that and that's great. Like if you want to, that's great. You're going to have a more consistent product. But I don't know that that's necessarily the game we're trying to play. And we do have the commercial yeast in there too. So it's like, at least from an activity and fermentation perspective, I know there's a certain amount of consistency.
Cool. One more thing just to kind of tie this up before we get into the show and tell, but like essentially these are two different flavor components. They are also two different leavening agents. Mm-hmm. Is that like a pretty basic way to break that down?
Yeah, for sure. And so flavor, leavening, texture too, I would say. Like I think there is a different, I mean, like I said, partly with the crust in terms of getting a thinner, crisper crust. For me, that's why I don't often love fully naturally leavened pizza doughs. I find them to be a little bit chewier and get more of that like leathery crust that you would get in like a sourdough bread, which for bread is great. And like I'm not against that, but to me, just like the pizza dough and bread dough are different things. And I like it to have a thinner crust, more like baguette-y, if that makes sense. And so yeah, I think so the texture in the crust, and then even just with the chew, like I find this, again, it gives you a little bit, it can be, if handled properly, it can give you this like lighter, airier, but it also gives some of that like breadier chew. And adding a little Poolish and then, or a little commercial yeast can sometimes help it get, especially on a line when there's a little bit, again, like throughout the service, you can't guarantee that you're going to be using it at the exact perfect moment every day in a restaurant, you know? So it helps get you a little bit more like lighter oven spring, you know, that more open, puffy, light crust and crumb that I like too.
Heard. Cool. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's, do you need
make some dough?
Yeah,
I'm going to grab a couple things really quick.
Please.
Just my scales and flours.
Okay, we're just about 9 minutes in, and I'm telling you, Max Blackman Gentile is the king of pizza, at least in my eyes. And hopefully you've already learned so much. I want to encourage you to keep going because there's so much more to learn in this episode. It's jam-packed, hour-long episode. We haven't done anything like this. I'm starting to really like this setup where you and I get to talk a little bit in between the episode. So keep sticking around because I have more comments to say. But yo, if you're liking it so far, just the conversation about starters, Poolish, how it affects the dough when it's over or under fermented, the flavor, the leavening, the texture, it's all gonna come full circle at the end. So if you're liking it so far, trust me, there's more to like. But if you've made it to this far, DM me real quick. It's 7:30 in the morning. I'm on the treadmill. I I just want to feel the love, y'all. I just want to feel the love that this is all worth it. Nah, it is worth it because it's already worth it for me. Like, I'm already learning so much re-listening to this episode in its entirety, because the YouTube version, if you've seen it, much shorter, much more compressed, and I have an editor for that, right? So doing these little episodes in its entirety to put it all out for you all to learn, to go deeper with Max, this is it. This is what it's all about. So I hope you enjoy. All right, let's get it.
All right, so gonna start with water. I'm gonna get behind you for water, sorry. And so we want, I like warm, we want kind of slightly warmer than or at least than San Francisco room temperature water, because San Francisco is kind of cold, but I like to go kind of between 75 and 80. Because I find like that's a little warm maybe for just a straight commercial yeasted dough, but for me, like sourdough really likes kind of like a slightly warmer, like almost like a 78 to 82 I find is like a really good temperature. And it just like helps it get going and gets a little bit more active more quickly.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I tend to shoot for somewhere around 78 is kind of nice. And that's one thing where, you don't necessarily have to check your water temperature, but again, for trying to get a certain amount of consistency, and since this is a dough recipe that I want other people to be able to make and do for me, gotta try to put certain amounts of consistency in there.
How much water are we adding?
A little bit more. I need 2440, so I just need a little bit more. So this is, again, like a batch size for 20 pizza doughs. I make, all my recipes for doughs in general are kind of like, they can be scaled up and down. I mean, a lot of pizza places will do recipes where it's like, this is one batch, but for me, it's like, I don't know, most bakeries work where you can like batch it by the loaf basically. And
today we need 300 instead of 298.
Yeah, exactly. And like, why not be able to have that level of consistency and precision? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I've done recently? I've given ChatGPT my shit. I was like 76% Tony Gimignani, 24% whole wheat. This is one dough ball. Today I need 27 for my pop-up.
Yeah. Nice.
And like it just spits it out for me.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Oh, today I need to make smaller dough balls because 280 was too big last time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't used ChatGPT for it yet, but that is smart. I've been recently much more on the ChatGPT game. I was late to the party, but I have to say it's pretty helpful. So
I was very late too.
Yeah.
But now I'm like.
Yeah, you're on board?
I'm on board.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So this is, again, young, the levain, pretty young, younger than I would want. And this is kind of what I was telling you the other day, where it's like it still floats. People will say, like, if it floats, it's ready. It will leaven it, and it's going to be a good starter, but it's still younger than I would actually want it to be, but it's definitely still floating. So I think that's one thing where people, like, they kind of look for that float test, but it can be a little bit deceptive. It doesn't necessarily, it's not like a one-size-fits-all.
And how much starter did you put in there, if you remember?
That was 400 grams.
Okay. This is the Poolish.
Yep. So this one should also float, and it's not as much. There you go.
Also 400 grams?
No, this 180. So again, they're both there for leavening, but I want the dough to have a little bit of acidity, but I don't love like a super sour crust. And like, to me, it's, again, some people love like a sourdough pizza. I like enough acidity that I do think like having some helps the whole thing pop, but too much then is pretty like overpower. It becomes like its own flavor. and then all the other toppings can be, it throws everything else off. And I do want, ultimately, I want the crust to be like really good on its own. I want people to eat it like, oh, this is really good bread. But I also don't want it to be like in the way of what the rest of the pizza experience is, you know? Like it should be there and noticeable and good, but not like the entire star of the show in a way.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe I put too much of an emphasis on it being a star.
I mean, I think it's like weird to say it that way because it's like it should be the star. It is the star. I do think it's the most important ingredient of the pizza.
But it needs to be a team player as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, like it's like why bother putting all the other stuff on there if you just wanted to show off the bread? Then we should just make like a margarita pizza, which is a great pizza. And that's why I think margarita works really well with a fully sourdough pizza, because it's like then all you really have is like sauce, cheese, basil, you know.
And then you used a little bit of instant dry yeast?
Yep. So instant as well, very small amount. But I like having all three in there. They kind of, again, that's what will help give it. It makes it a little bit more consistent for sure for us, but it helps give it that extra pop in the oven, and also definitely thinner, crisper crust. That's the part that's important that I'm going for sure.
Do you remember the yeast amount?
1.6 grams, and I use a little micro scale because it's literally like 1.6 is right. If it was 2, it would be more than I actually want in this. It's really meant to just be like a very, very small amount. So get some flours here real quick.
Yep.
Cool.
You have 4 flours, or
3 go into this one. So we got whole grain spelt.
From
so this
shout them out. That's cool.
This I've been getting it through Camus, but we're working with Cape Valley Mills too, which is more. It's in Cape Valley, so like near Sacramento, with a few other flours. No one in California is really growing spelt. It's like a little bit harder to dehull, and it sounds like most of the farmers here. It's just like it's a more difficult crop to grow, and then you need more expensive machinery to help dehull it, and so they're just not that interested.
What does dehull mean?
Like the grain, so it's grass obviously, and then wheat is basically like the seed of the grass, but when it grows it has this like a hull, like a papery husk kind of on it. And the different varieties have, some of them are much easier to like thresh and remove than others, and spelt is more difficult, so often you need different equipment for that.
Understood.
So that was the spelt. This is Glacier Peak from Cairn Spring Mills.
You know, I'm going to ask you how much of the spelt in the Glacier Peak?
Yeah, it was $4.40 for the spelt. Glacier Peak is going to be $13.10.
Are you going off the dome right now, or are you looking at a recipe?
No, I've made this 3 days in a row now, this exact batch size. So I can't necessarily remember all of them this well normally, but today I can. I'm good at remembering numbers for at least short periods of time.
That's helpful in life.
That goes away. So Glacier Peak is a type 65. They pretty sure have been using Yeca Rojo, which is like the variety. It's a hard red wheat. And I mean, I love Cairn Spring Mills. They are in Washington, like Bellingham, just basically like northeast sort of Seattle. And all the grain comes from the Skagit Valley, which is nearby. And they only work with farms that are growing like fully regenerative farms. So they don't even have they're not technically certified organic. And a lot of people are often like, has to be organic. But like organic at this point is essentially like a USDA, certification. Yeah. And so
pay the money.
It's really expensive. A lot of small farmers don't really have, like, farming is arguably the hardest business out there, and they don't have the time or the money to do that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of farms just like in general in the world that are not certified organic, but they're growing, like all their practices are organic.
Cool.
And regenerative is like the next step where it's actually improving the health of the soil through like just better land management, basically. But so like using cover crops, for example, like if you're growing wheat in that field, one season you would grow like legumes or beans the next season because the wheat's taking out nitrogen and then the legumes add it back into the soil. So things like that, which usually, if you're doing a good job of regenerative farming, it actually, like you can take a farm that was fallow before you got it. This usually requires having like animal livestock of some kind, but you can actually like make it produce again. You know, cool. It's like improves the health of that land. So they're like everything they work with is regenerative, and then they do a really cool thing during the milling process where it's both roller mill and stone mill. So like stone mill, more like ancient milling process, better for the like starches and proteins, starch specifically, because it doesn't heat it up as much during the milling process. But it can't mill as fine, and so
or as fast.
Right, yeah, and so Industrial Revolution, everyone started using roller mills, but it heats up the grain a lot, damages the starch, which again can make it a lot harder to develop like a really nice strong dough. And so they kind of do a process of a little bit of both, and it just creates like a really finely milled flour, so they're able to keep more of the bran and the germ in the final flour with still get like the performance of a whiter flour, even though there's still more bran and germ left in. So that Glacier Peak is a type 65, and then the Edison, which was the last flour I added, is actually a type 85, which just means like 85% of the bran and the germ are left in. So a lot of like, if you bought like King Arthur's generally going to be like a type 50, type 55 maybe for reference. So there's like 30% more bran and germ left in that flour. I'm just give it a scrape. You can see it's like a pretty small batch size for this mixer, but
you got to help it out a little bit.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a lot of contact.
Right.
So essentially, your theory is leaving in more bran and germ, so that it's for a flavor characteristic.
Yeah, I like it for flavor. I like it for the fermentation is better because, I mean, if anyone's like mixed sourdough starters, like just white versus with whole wheat, it's pretty quick. How you see how much faster it moves 100%. With the whole wheat.
More nutrients.
It's like the same thing. If you think about like the way we are, it's like we're healthier when we have more nutrients, and so the whole wheat, that's why it's like too bad that wheat gets such a bad rap, because as being like unhealthy to eat carbs and bread, and it's like wheat on its own is kind of like a perfect food in a lot of ways. It has fat, protein, and carbs, and tons of nutrients. That's why people ate, like, it's what sustained humans for...
Not the everyday wheat.
Right, not shitty, super white, treated with glyphosate,
Bimbo.
all the... Yeah, exactly.
Measurements for was it last two flours?
Yeah, it was 1310 for the Glacier Peak and 1760 for the Edison.
Okay. And then you didn't really talk too much about why you add Spelt. Is it also flavor? Does it do anything? Softens?
Yeah, so Spelt I like because it is softer, but then specifically, so gluten is it's like two amino acid chains that when you add the water, it forms the protein. So there's glutenin and gliadin, and they do different things. Glutenin is the one that's for like elasticity, which helps the dough keep its shape, and gliadin is the one that makes it more extensible and stretchier. Spelt has more gliadin than glutenin, so it's longer. And so I specifically like Spelt for making a dough that can like stretch. It makes it a little easier for us. If I'm going to use an ancient grain like Spelt, einkorn, any like kamut or
rye.
No. Rye is not necessarily varieties of it are, but those are kind of the main ones. I'm forgetting one for some reason. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But point is, a lot of them are like weaker in protein, and the spelt tends to be still pretty strong, but it is more that it has more of the extensibility than the elasticity. And for pizza, you want it to stretch. So,
okay, question for you about the type 60 and the type 80. Could you just get away with a type 70?
Yes. The reason I use so Glacier Peak is really strong. It's like I said, they use Yekka Rojo, and it's a hard red wheat. The protein percent on that flour is like 13.5%. It's very, very strong. I tend to find that it's too strong, and that will make like a chewier dough than I want. And also for people kind of think that like the stronger the better for getting like more oven spring and a more open crumb. But if it's too strong, like it's trying to stretch, and it's like fighting against it. And so softer flours can actually help you get a better, more open crumb. So the Edison's more of like a 10.5. It's more like an all-purpose in some ways.
Yeah.
So I wanted more of that in the dough. That and the spelt balance out the strength of the Glacier Peak.
My buddy who does Kanoto style in Vegas, he makes sure to use a soft flour too. And
even like the Caputo, 00 that a lot of people use, that's very traditional for pizza, is on the softer side. I can't remember the specs exactly, but I think it's like usually maybe around 11% protein, but it is definitely on that 10 to 11 end of the spectrum, which is I think for pizza, that's a nice place to be, is like maybe around 11. But again, like the 13.5 works, but for me, it gets too strong. So that's kind of what I'm balancing with adding in the Edison as well.
Yeah. So I tried your crust. Delicious.
Thank you. Well, you tried it old. You gotta try a fresh one.
I will. You don't gotta tell me twice. Yeah. But even then, I can already get a lot of I can see how different it is compared to your everyday pizzeria.
Yeah, and I want it to be, I don't even want it to be, I want it to be obviously different, but not necessarily, like there is a lot of whole grain in this, but I don't want people to leave thinking like that was whole wheat pizza, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily love whole wheat pizza myself. Like I still want it to taste like a really good pizza, light, not, like it's still meant to be sort of like nostalgic New York, closer to New York style pizza, but just should taste better than using like all Trumps, you know what I mean?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but like when we were first talking about doing this recording, I wanted to ask you about California pizza and like what that means to you. But would you argue that in addition to fresher ingredients, maybe an quote unquote artisanal approach to pizza,
sure,
this adding of whole wheat and varying wheats or types of wheat is probably characteristic of California style pizza?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, it goes along with like adding more interesting creative toppings, but I think California, San Francisco in particular, is kind of like the sourdough bread capital of at least the U.S., if not one of them in the world, and I think it stems from that, of people being like, well, why couldn't we add some different flours to this dough, or like why not try to make it a little bit more interesting? And I definitely think, I think in general California's always been good about being like, you've got your like East Coast pizzerias that are like, these are the rules, we have to do it this way. And you've got Italy, which is even more like, these are the rules, we're never going to change those rules. And I think California has always had more of that, like cooks, chefs, bakers being like, but we could change it, like why not change it?
Absolutely. I like that.
Yeah.
So
this is done. This is basically where I would get to an autolyse. It's not a true autolyse because it has all the leavening in there, but I let it rest for about a half an hour. You can see it's not really developed, very shaggy still, but it is all hydrated and we're starting to develop a little bit of strength. But I mean, definitely like not looking smooth at all. Not really, like it's still spreading to this part of the bowl, whereas like by the time we're done with this batch size is going to be like the issue of mixing this small and this big of a spiral is that it's just going to be like up in the hook and not necessarily getting as much like kneading contact as we want.
Right.
Bigger batch size, that doesn't happen, but.
So if you had a bigger batch size, you wouldn't auto-lease then?
No, I always do. With these, it's just kind of nice also, especially adding more whole grain. Like it just takes a little bit longer for it to hydrate. So I always give it a little bit of time to rest. For me, it's not about, like if I'm doing a bread dough that's going to be like a much higher hydration than this, I actually like a real auto-lease where I'm mixing the flours and water, not adding the levain and giving it like an hour, sometimes 2 hours, which helps develop strength without needing to mix it, gives it more time to hydrate, and also gets like the enzymatic activity going. So when you do add in the levain or yeast or whatever you're using, it's just got like more, it's basically ready, like those starches are already starting to get broken down into sugars and there's food for it to eat right away, so it kind of like kicks off that fermentation really quickly.
I was like so surprised you were using warm water, but now I get it. You're not like using a lot of the mixer, but is there a benefit to not just using a bunch of cold water and mixing the full gluten development right now?
It sort of depends. With this dough, you could, in theory, because it's not that wet. It tends to be like really wet doughs, like 80% or above, where trying to mix it all at once, you are gonna heat it up a fair amount, but you're also gonna like oxidize the dough a lot more because you're gonna need to mix more. It will get more actual time mixing. And this is gonna oxidize too, to an extent. Like how sort of brown this is now, you'll see the finished dough is going to look whiter, honestly, but I try to oxidize it as little as possible because that's like there is some flavor from that carotenoid pigment, and as you mix more and more, you're like whipping more oxygen in, and it bleaches the dough, so it will get, that's why the color will change to look a little bit whiter, but it does change the flavor a little bit too. So for me, it's like we want like a gentler mix overall. And just for again, like strength, like chewiness, I don't want it to get too chewy. And so basically the less actual mixing I can do, the better, to not sort of risk over mixing and then have it be like a tougher dough.
Sick. Okay. Learned. That's interesting. I can't wait to try it.
Yeah. For the sake of doing this today, we don't necessarily have to let it auto-lease, but we could make some pizza, come back.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, okay, I was thinking that. Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. Let's cut.
Yo, okay, that was tight so far. If you're still with me, I got a special surprise for you. In the show notes, I have the entire baker's percentages in there. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last commentary. Probably not. I was thinking it though. I don't think this is a recipe for 20. I think this is a recipe for 10. You and I are both going to find out later on in the conversation because I think I'm going to ask him what the dough size is. But if my basic arithmetic serves me correctly, I think this is a batch for 10. IDK. But yeah, check out the show notes. There's going to be information on all of his flours, his baker's percentages, and we're going to talk about oil soon. So there's a link for Cordo olive oil down there. If you need a re-up, it's the best fucking oil ever. So fresh, especially if you get it in the bag-in-box. It's a little bit more expensive, but in terms of how much you're getting versus the bottles and how much longer that's staying fresh, it is absolutely the deal. So there's a link there in the show notes. That's my affiliate link. I'd appreciate it if you used it. All right, let's get back to it, y'all.
What was the total hydration of this, if you know?
It's like the overall hydration, I would say is it's about 72.5 in this, which includes the water in the starters.
Poolish starters.
Yeah.
Got it. Salt?
Salt, 90 grams is 2.5% salt. And then it's going to be 3% olive oil.
What does olive oil do to your dough?
So fat, I mean, it helps to soften it a little bit too, which like just enriched doughs in general. Typically below like 5%, it can kind of help to soften it without dramatically weakening the structure. More enriched doughs like a brioche or,
What are they?
a challah or something. You have to be a little bit more careful and really add the fat in much slower at the end to make sure it's developed. This one is like less important, but I do still add it towards the end. But it helps soften it a little bit. I like the way it cooks. It just like helps. The water will cook out a little faster in the oven, so it helps keep it like slightly more hydrated too in a longer bake, since we are doing like cooks for about 5 to 6 minutes at a pretty high heat, and I find that it's helping to keep it a little bit softer while still getting like really crispy. Because it sort of, as the water is cooking out, the oil is like hydrating, but it almost starts to like fry it a little bit instead, whereas the water is just like going to evaporate out,
Okay, so a little bit of a texture play.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I mean, I like using olive oil in it, and I think there's probably some people that would be like, it has to be olive oil as like a purist, and some that would say it's too expensive. To be totally honest, I don't know that you're like tasting the olive oil at 3% in the finished product.
I can smell it.
But it is nice, and I do like it, and honestly, this is really good olive oil. We use Like Family, which is from here in California. That is all organic Monterey County olives. Woman-owned company, great, love it. And they just like the oil is really delicious. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use it for the whole year because I think they went through a lot this year, and we're going to use a lot of olive oil. But I that's what I've used up until this point. And we're gonna, as soon as they get more in, we'll use more of her olive oil. But she does some really great. They also do really cool like flavored co-pressed oils where, like a lot of flavored olive oils, they'll add like an extract at the end, but usually they have this like nasty sort of rancid flavor. They do it like the true traditional way where you like press the oils. Yeah, exactly. But so she does like a Meyer lemon one, they do a lime one, they do a Caracara one, they do a chili one, and again, all with produce that's grown like regional, like from pretty nearby, whether it's in Monterey County or nearby. Yeah, sure. Show them off, Like Family. That's the Caracara, this is the lime.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then just withholding salt.
Same, well, it's just for the hydration. Like salt is hygroscopic, so it wants to absorb water, and so does the wheat. And so if you add it in right away, it just it takes longer for the grain to be hydrated, and ultimately gluten development is essentially the main like component there is the grain actually being able to absorb the water and be hydrated. So I just find, again, we're adding a lot of whole grain to this. It needs a little time to be hydrated, and we want to add the salt in at the end. It's also, you can see pretty quickly when you add the salt also helps it get more strength. And if you mix it in early, I tend to find that you get a more elastic, tighter dough. And you can see it like be stretchier and more extensible when it's added towards the end. You see it really clearly with really wet sourdough breads, but I find that it's still true with ours. And again, like we want this to be pretty easy to stretch when we're on the line, and so it helps make a stretchier dough.
How much of this, bread theory or dough theory comes from your time at Tartine versus just like throwing down in the kitchen and finding out what works?
I mean, a lot more of it was that, honestly. Like when I was at Tartine, I would help in the bread room at times when they were like low on staff or things like that, but I wasn't like actively in the bread room that often. I made a lot of bread before I worked at Tartine. That was definitely what like brought me to Tartine. But yeah, a lot of it was doing stuff, working. I mean, I was in the bakery for a long time at Roberta's in New York, and I did bread at a few other places in New York. A lot of it was like reading a lot and messing around with it once I was doing my own bread programs and experimenting. There's a couple cool books that explain the actual science that I got really into, and I think there's a lot there that helps you play with it from a little bit more of like an informed perspective. But yeah, a lot of it was just messing around and watching other people on Instagram and then trying what they were doing.
Gotta love IG.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's make some pizzas. Yeah. Cool.
We're ready.
Cool.
Right, cool. So,
go for it.
What are you making for us today?
We're gonna do like a classic, the Marone, which is like our version of a classic cheese pizza. I guess it depends on how many you want, but the spicy Ronnie, which is a spicy pepperoni pizza.
Yeah.
And the fungi, which is like our mushroom, which is kind of like it's a white mushroom pizza that's like really all about the mushrooms, basically.
Three's a party. Sounds
Great.
good.
Perfect.
Marone.
So yeah, we'd normally stretch over there, but basically just for me, I try to get not too much flour on the top. Some people, like I actually just put the bottom in the flour. I don't put the top in. I get enough flour that it's not going to stick to my hands, but if it's too floury on top, it just doesn't color as well, I tend to find. And you do shake a lot of it off, but I just prefer to not use too much flour if you can avoid it.
And you are of the mindset that the top is the top and the bottom is the bottom?
Yeah. The shiny top side is the top, the rough side is the bottom for me, but I know some people do it in weird ways. So I start by kind of like trying to press out gas to the edge as much as possible without degassing completely. And then I kind of do this where I stretch and tug with just my fingertips. Kind of helps define that crust still. And if I get any spots that are like thicker, I can like tell if we need to give it a little more of a tug or like move more quickly. And then once it's like, I mean, this dough is pretty easy to stretch. So once it's kind of this size, we're already getting there, but that's when I'll switch to kind of like giving it the little bit of the slap. And then for me, I do, that's not the best example, but I do like to, just because I'm going through it slow, but I like to, if I need it to get a little bit bigger, I'll do that typically on my wrists. So it's a little sticky to do, but I'll do just kind of like spinning there. And this is kind of the size. We go for like a pretty decent size. It's definitely more than a 12-inch pizza. It's kind of more like a 13 to 14. I like to get a little bit of flour on the bottom just to help make sure it doesn't stick. And then it goes back down, and that's our pizza.
13, 14 inches, more or less. How many grams is the dough ball?
325.
325, okay.
Yeah. So like a little bigger. I tend to, like I would go maybe 300 for like more of a 12-inch. But yeah, this, I don't know, it's the size that I like, where you get, for me, this is like, I find with a 12-inch a lot of the time, it's, thanks.
Is that downstairs?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
For me, I find with the 12-inch pizzas, like you get like 2 bites before you get to the point where it's like, you're like at that awkward, like I'm sort of at the crust, like what do I do here?
Oh my God.
Do I need to fold it up? What, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a 12-inch pizza is just not the ideal size.
No, I mean, the problem is for a restaurant, it's like I kind of get it most of the way there, and then I like a little bit of the sauce like on the edges, so then I kind of go, and then I just kind of go crazy a little bit.
Yeah. Your thought on 12-inch pizzas?
I mean, I prefer bigger pizzas, but like it's hard for a restaurant to make money. Like even the places that are doing the bigger ones, like I did a pop-up with my friends at Decades in New York, and they're doing like 16-inch pies. Or Jules here is doing, maybe it's about a 16, it's pretty big. And the problem with it to me is like, I think people, like some of the things I hear are just that people are like, it's expensive, you know, for what it is. And you're like, it's $33 for a dinner for 2 people. Like that's not expensive at all, but that's sort of impression that people take away from it. And so, like, even when I did that pop-up at Decades, people also felt like a two-top really only needed one pizza, but if you want to like try all the different pizzas, you can't with those bigger pizzas. So unfortunately, like, the math works better for a restaurant nowadays if they're smaller and people get more. But I like bigger pizzas better.
Same. Walk me through what you're doing here.
Yeah, sorry. So sauce
you're good.
with a little garlic, oregano. I forgot our ajica, so I'm gonna put a little bit of ajica on there still.
What is ajica?
So it's like a chili flake spice mix that we make that's sort of based off of this Georgian pepper puree that is normally like a wet puree, but we make it like a dry powder version. So it's chili flake, you can kind of smell, it's chili flake, marigold, flowers,
Can I get
coriander, coriander, fenugreek, and a little salt.
Okay.
So just really aromatic. And we use Togarashi chilies for that.
That's delicious.
Yeah, it's just a little more interesting than just straight up chili flake, you know? Not that, I mean, I like chili flake, but it just gives it, for me, it's like I like thinking about the pizzas as, you know, everything's like, this should just taste like a classic cheese pizza, but
It's not.
yeah, you know, everything's like a little different.
I like that. I see that. Oh my goodness.
So then I finish it with a little bit of extra sauce because I like some sauce on the top. This needs a little flour, but I like a little sauce on the top, and also it kind of helps with the fresh mozzarella that we stretch to
Not dry out.
not dry out as much if it's on top, so it's kind of like a win-win. And then we're gonna go bottom. Sorry.
We don't usually make
tight
dough
quarters.
here.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of things just before you make the next one. Garlic as a side versus on the sauce. You don't want garlic on all of the pizzas, I'm guessing?
Partly that we don't want it on all of them, and also partly just that I tend to find that, like, you know, for a pizza restaurant, you can make the sauce in big batches, and then sometimes you have it for a few days, and like tomato sauce holds really well like that. But sometimes if you add the garlic to the sauce, it gets like really garlicky, and kind of like the flavor gets a little bit too intense. So this way we can like add it to each one a little bit more the way we want. So that's
temp.
That's that guy.
708.
7:15.
715.
7:15.
How long are we trying to bake it for?
We've been going about 5 minutes, I would say. I've seen a few different ones, but they probably between 5 and 6 minutes. We've been testing at this temperature, definitely with the gas oven. It's like the electric ovens have heat elements on the top and bottom. This just has heat like it's like underneath, and it's like coming up in the back. So the floor is going to be hotter than the air temperature, so the bottom colors faster. So we are moving it onto screens, and it's been cooking really nicely that way. So I'm pretty happy with it overall. And it's sort of surprising how much more color you still get on the bottom in this oven, even once you move it to the screen. I think like a lot of people, like we've played around with it, and it's surprising. Yeah, if you want to see, I can show you, because I'm probably, even though this top doesn't have much color and isn't really set, bottom's already getting like a decent amount of color. So I'm going to move that already to the screen, and we're going to let it cook the rest of the way on the screen.
Nice.
And while we go get this guy ready, tops. Probably. So while that's going, I'll probably get this going. And you can see this one's pretty gassy. This, if I'm being totally honest, this dough was mixed 2 days ago. We actually normally use it the next day, not 2 days later. So this is a little bit older than I would normally like it or want it, but it's still been looking really good and it cooks really well in this oven, even on the second day. Yeah, maybe spin that. So I want a little bit bigger, but there we go.
You say a little bit bigger on the stretch?
Yeah, than it was initially, but I like that there. And then this one's like, because it's on the second day, it's pretty loose and easy to work with. I can stretch it a little bit more on the peel if I need to, but this size looks good to me, so I'm happy with it there.
So I saw your walk-in, and it's not lacking in space.
No, thankfully. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, I find that people who do like a one-day dough generally are doing it because of a lack of space. What's your choice, or what's your reason?
I just find that that's when it's like the lightest and crispiest. I think there's more like, you're definitely developing a lot of flavor on the, like with the longer fermentation, but it also tends to me, it starts to get softer. Like those proteins are breaking down a lot more, and it gets like, it gets softer, but it gets chewier at the same time without having as much of that thin, crisp crust that I've talked about wanting. Yeah. And we've like, I mean, this one's still coming out nice, and so it hasn't been an issue so much, but yeah, I just kind of like it when it's still a little bit younger. It's also a little more active, a bit more open crumb. Yeah. It's just less tired. So that's coming out.
Less tired, I like that. Yeah, you're completely changing the way I look at dough already. Like, I do a longer fermentation, but it does get a little chewy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of places, like, I was on the phone with someone this morning, and the guy that does the oven installs, and he was talking about, he's helping someone install in Portland right now, and he was like, they do this delicious 5-day fermentation, but they just couldn't get it crispy. And I was like, yeah, because it's 5 days old, you know?
All right, y'all. We're about to get into the life-changing moment of trying Max's pizza for the first time, and let me tell you, it's life-changing. It is my favorite slice to this day, truthfully, and I even went to go try it out later that month or the following month. But yo, amazing, right? And before we continue, I just want to let you know and remind you, rather, that Max is cooking this pizza at 715 degrees, more or less. And he got his first iteration of Jules pizza as a pop-up using uni ovens, using portable ovens that get that high. And so I just thought I'd remind you all, if you need an oven from Uni, if you need a mixer, if you need gadgets, all of that, I'd greatly appreciate it if you use my affiliate link below. You can make some amazing pizzas like Max through Uni. So I'd appreciate it if you use my links. It helps so much as I continue this pizza content journey, for real, for real. All right, let's get into the pizza, y'all.
So that's kind of like, I'm happy with this bake. This is definitely like what I like to see. I like these like charred black bubble spots, but I like that I want to see contrast where there's spots that are like pretty blonde and like almost whitish still.
Really?
Well, because I like that that's like showing me there's oven spring where like this part got more color because it was exposed for the longest amount of time, or like the bubbles, but then these lighter spots are the spots that like because of the oven spring like weren't even exposed until towards the end of the bake, you know? And so I just like the contrast of where there's like light spots all the way to black spots, basically.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it looks good.
Bottom?
Yeah, bottom looks
really
good. Nice, again, same thing. I like a few sort of black spots, but nothing that's like that like icy black charred look, and then just nice brown even color everywhere. We land on the screen so that it has like a second to not steam immediately.
Yeah.
And then we'll
cut it up.
Cut it, yeah.
You ever consider going full screen on a gas deck oven?
I liked, in theory I would. People talk about this. I've seen a lot about this recently, but I like to hear that, like the crunch as we go through, and like to see a clean cut through is like makes me know it's a crispy pizza.
Yeah, and you don't think you would get that with a screen?
I think this was mostly on a screen, but I think that initial set on the stone helps. But I don't know if it's like necessary for the whole bake. But yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not like against. I think some people who are like morally opposed to it. It's like there's so many ways to get the pizza you want to eat. You know, I think you can get there in a lot of different ways. So if it's working, it's working. Yeah, and then for me, I want to like hear that, and then be able to like pick it up and not have a flop, but not be so dry that it's like a cracker the whole way through, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like nice to me. I like seeing, open crumb. Jeez. It's not necessarily about like, I don't care that it's like, I don't know, that looks good to me. This is like a little flop without a fold is okay. Like everyone's always like, it should be straight the whole way. But if you pick up a New York slice, anyone who's like been knows, like the real New Yorkers know you got to do that. It's like, you got to do the it's little like bit of the pinch. Yeah, exactly. Pinch. That's the idea, okay.
And then that crackling at the bottom you're a fan of?
Yeah, I mean, I think like to me this is nice. I mean, this edge, this side, which was furthest the back, got a little dark on this side, maybe.
I was talking about this little break right here.
Oh yeah, I love that. That to me is like, again, like when I look at it.
You assist there.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
Yeah, with again, like when I'm eating pizza in New York, that's like one of the things you look for is like if you do the fold, like it's like, do you see that crack line, And to me, again, that's like showing that it's got that thin crispness that I want to see, basically. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that again, like we're sort of in between. Like I wouldn't call this directly a New York style pizza. It's definitely cooked hotter, and like a lot of New York pizzas don't get this much char on it. But
starting to lean that way.
They are, yeah. Definitely, the new ones are definitely moving in that direction, which is how I like to eat it. So I'm happy to see that. But anyway, this is that's our cheese pizza.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Hit pause. Okay. It's not like.
That's the thing that I'm always trying to avoid.
What the hell?
I never want to see people like have to rip away.
That's a crazy texture.
That's like, to me, if it's right with the softer flours, it should be like, you should have that open crumb, but it should be crispy. And it should be soft enough that you like when you bite it, it just kind of like your teeth go in and you get the bite and you don't have to rip it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to like a Pizza Hut that's super doughy, it does this too, rips off. Mm-hmm. But this isn't super doughy.
And they're using like really cheap, super low protein flours that have conditioners to make them strong enough to hold together. Which is kind of the idea with all Trumps too, where it's like, you've got the dough conditioners in there. That's ultimately what calcium bromate is. It makes it stronger with lower protein so that you can that's why a lot of the New York slice places are that. You like take a bite and it isn't necessary. Some of them are like soft, but they're strong enough to stretch really far. But then a lot of them use like the 14.5% protein flours so that they can stretch it forever. And then it's so chewy. I don't want, like your jaw shouldn't be tired by the time you eat. Like finish eating a pizza.
I'll admit, I get some tired jaw on my pizza, dude. Like I'm using a higher protein, I'm going longer fermentation. I might be using starter that's a little past its peak. So this is crazy. This texture is crazy. Crazy good.
Good, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I'll make a couple more.
Sure.
And then, get some. All right, like get under it. And I try not to touch it too much because it definitely, you will degas it if you're touching it too much. But it's also, to be honest, part of it's also like when you're like in a busy service, it's gonna happen, and like it's pizza, you know. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like everyone isn't gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
But we can try to get as many as we can, you know. And
then that whole like artistic sauce spread that you got going on. What is remind me, what's the purpose of that?
I'll start by getting an actual circle, but I like getting a little bit of the crust. I think it looks really nice to see a little bit of the sauce that gets like burnt on the edges of the crust, and I just like how it looks.
A couple extra look and a couple extra bitter notes.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you just spread on?
So this one gets a little ajika too.
Okay.
And then the cheese mix.
What pizza are we making?
This is spicy Rani.
Rani. Okay.
Pepperoni. And then, so it gets cheese mix, and then it gets a lot of pepperoni.
Yeah. When you say cheese mix, mozzarella, caciocavallo?
Mozzarella, caciocavallo, and pecorino toscano. So that's like a lot of our pizzas get that blend. And, I think traditionally it's usually like often just mozzarella, or some places will do like mozzarella and provolone or something, or fontina.
Yeah.
Cacio is basically like a slightly fancier, funkier provolone. So it's like definitely in that vein.
Sure.
And then I love pecorino toscano. I mean, that is, it's basically the Tuscan version. Not quite as like salty. I use the younger version, so it's only aged 30 days the one I use is 30 days. So it's not like Pecorino Romano, like the block that you can shave. It's like a softer, shreddy, really melty cheese. So it's great for, it's great for like a grilled cheese or this.
Yeah.
All right, this one sat here a little too long, but.
You got it. I believe in you.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Did it. If someone at home is looking to develop their own cheese mix, or maybe like change up just their everyday mozzarella, what sort of questions were you trying to answer when developing yours, or what kind of flavor profiles?
For me, it's like, this is still like mostly mozzarella, like mozzarella is definitely like a good cheese for pizza, but I just like having a little bit of like funk, which the cacio has, and then the Toscano melts really well and adds like, it is a used milk cheese, so it also adds a little funk and like a little bit of that like grassiness.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like whatever you like. I think it's just, I was gonna go top, thank you. That one was a little fussy, but we got there. I just think like, to me, it's just like, it's the same idea to like making the ajika. It's just like, can you make it a little bit more interesting or complex?
Yeah.
I had a chef that I worked for who used to be like, we did a lot of pickled stuff, and like every recipe had like 3 or 4 vinegars. And one time I was like, why are there always so many vinegars in it? And he was like, I don't really know. You just add a bunch together and it just makes them taste more interesting. And I was like, okay, I guess that's the answer.
I like that. It does. I like the interesting part of it.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to stand out?
I think it's funny because like on the one hand, I want to make like really good pizza that is like nostalgic and reminds people of pizza that good pizza that they've had, but it does have to stand out on the other hand. And like, it's funny to me how many times we've been asked already, like, why do you want to open a pizza place? There's already so much good pizza in San Francisco. And to me, it's like, not that there isn't a lot of good pizza, but there is still like not a lot to me that's like more of a New York style in this, especially in this more like individual size. There's not like a ton of that, and that's kind of the pizza I want to eat, but it does have to stand out, otherwise people aren't going to come, really, So I think it's important. I think like the people who come, we do have a few like dedicated people that would come to all the pop-ups that loved the Marone, which is the cheese pizza, which is like our favorite, and it's like, it is one of those things where it's like, you might not know why. Like all of those things, we don't necessarily tell everyone about the Ajiko or the cheese blend or whatever, but it's like, you just taste it and you're like, this is a good cheese. This is a good, I've had bad cheese pizza. I've had okay cheese pizza. This is a good cheese pizza, you know?
That's interesting that you say it that way. Yeah, but then at the end of the day, that's like super, not everyone's a pizza nerd.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, exactly.
More often than not, people know what good food is, or maybe that's an overstatement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe, but
Okay.
but I mean, I think the Bay Area has like a pretty outsized number of people that care a lot about food for the size of this place.
Yeah.
And you know, I think there's a lot of people where, again, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're like a food snob or a food nerd or anything like that. It's just like, does it taste good? And there is going to be some, you may not always know why it tasted good or why it tasted better than the other version you've had before, but you can tell that it does. And so I think that's kind of what I'm going for, is just, I hope that that people who have it like it, and they don't have to necessarily know why. I just want them to think it's the best pizza, you know?
Normally when I see people screen a pizza afterwards, it's to like prevent it from getting too hot on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But those screens are already in there. So
yeah, they're pretty hot, but which is why it does continue to get more color. But honestly, I do find that it does help keep them from. This is actually, I learned this from a place where I did a pop-up in Seoul, this pizzeria, where we were doing it in a Pizza Master, but every pizza was like that. They kept the screens in the back, and I thought the same thing, where I was like, I don't really get it. Like, it's metal, it's in a 700 degree oven, it's gonna be 700 degrees. Like, how is that any better? But I think just because it is metal, but it's so thin that it doesn't have the same amount of thermal mass that the stone has.
it like takes in a little bit, it goes to the pizza, and after that it's cold again.
Exactly. And so I think as soon as you land, it's immediately absorbing it, but then because it's thinner metal and there's an air gap, it doesn't immediately get like replenished by the heat underneath the way that like the stone, which is like there's a layer of stone, and then there's an air gap actually to retain hot air, and then another layer of stone underneath in this oven. So it's got a lot, it really stays super hot on the floor. So I think that would be my not perfectly scientific answer, but I think that's probably right.
I can see that. That's
less thermal mass.
Okay.
Usually the answer with any oven question has something to do with thermal mass. So.
Heard.
All right, this is about to come out.
What makes it spicy?
Well, you're gonna see, because we put a lot of Calabrian
I'm all
chili
jumping
on
the gun
it.
over here, my bad. And then earlier you alternated decks.
Yeah, I mean, this one was actually just not hot enough yet.
I see.
And so I did it in the bottom, but I don't know. I think I like cooking in the top one because it's better for how tall I am.
Yeah.
But most other people that are, I think, gonna work here are gonna probably like the bottom one, so we'll see.
Sheesh. Wow.
Yeah, there's a pepperoni. So same idea, just nice, like, love the like black spots. I even like a bubble. I mean, sometimes they get bigger, but I even like a big bubble like that sometimes. But I like that there's like some contrast and some lighter spots too. And then bottom looks very good to me. Lots of contrast. It's a little white from the flour because this one sat on there for a while and I had to reflour it. It's a little floury.
That's like what we were just talking about. Yeah, okay.
But otherwise it looks pretty good.
Yeah, adding more flour, less color, wow. Type of pepperoni?
Ezzo. Honestly, I love their pepperoni.
Yeah.
Like it's, I know I wanted to use like Molinari or something that was maybe more local or just like different than what I feel like everybody's using, but it's just really good. And honestly, I'm surprised how many places are not using it. Like to me, I'm sometimes still like, why hasn't, we've all figured out that it's really good pepperoni. Why, like it's not a secret anymore.
Is it more expensive than Hormel?
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And
Hormel's a power horse.
It is,
Powerhouse.
it is, yeah. And to be honest, Hormel's just not really using very good quality meat, but I mean, not that I still like Hormel pepperoni, it's just, I feel a little better about using this. I wanted to find one that was like, I mean, in New York for a little while when I worked at Emily, I had the Meat Hook making a custom one for us that was really good. But so decent amount of the Calabrian chili and the oil, and then we finish this one. If we have do we have a microplane around still? Just shave some parm on this one too.
Just use your teeth.
Yeah. Here, Tony, I got one up here.
Okay.
Sorry, we can pretend we're ready for this.
Movie magic.
Yeah.
And what are you shaving this, sorry?
Parmesan.
Parmesan.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, it's definitely like salty. You've got a lot of pepperoni, a lot of Calabrian chili, a lot of parm, but it's just one of those ones that's good and salty, and people like it with.
If you're ordering pepperoni.
Exactly. Get a beer, and then same idea. I mean, even with want the crack and want. Yeah, same thing.
Bomb, dude.
Yeah, that's a pepperoni pizza.
That's a great looking pie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should try this one while it's hot too.
Oh yeah. You gonna have a bite too?
I will, even though I don't need another one. But here, we want to put it over. We can put it here. Something. We put them here. Yeah. It might be really hot. Is the other thing, but.
Hot, but good. Mm-hmm. I love is it Calabrian?
Yeah.
Yeah. That zing that you get.
Yeah, definitely. So this one will also, we make a fermented hot garlic honey. So it's like raw honey, garlic, chili flake, thyme, fermented for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we do have that option for people to add, since everyone loves the like hot honey pepperoni situation. People love the ranch with this one too.
I bet.
As
got
a
an extra rag for me?
Yeah, here.
Thanks.
I mean,
Thank
a plate too, and then get you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of pepperoni, so it's greasy.
Juicy, greasy.
Yeah.
Flavor.
Yep.
Hop on that while it's hot. Yeah.
I mean, crust is good though today.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
Are you reconsidering your one-day dough?
I mean, kind of. Or at least what we were saying before is, what I like is at least this makes me feel really confident that like we can use it on the second day. You know what I mean? Which is really nice for the production schedule, and like, honestly, when we open, we're going to be closed 2 days, and
It's spicy, Tristan. You said you're gonna be closed 2 days?
yeah, just for a little bit when we open, but it'd be nice to know that we could, like, if I mix, I could specifically mix for a second day or whatever, you know what I mean?
It's crazy good, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, do you kind of see what I mean about like the shattery
Absolutely.
thing? Like that's really what I want, is like, for like when you fold it together and you bite through it, you're getting like two layers. It's like crispy, thin, shattery, all the cheesy good. It's like a sandwich basically, you know, with like really good, thin, crispy bread. And I feel like that to me is that's like the texture I want, but a lot of places, it's like a lot doughier than that.
You know what's so weird is that this texture is like unlike any I've tried before, and you just wouldn't be able to tell from looking at it on Instagram, you know?
Yeah.
You see that pizza and you're just like, oh yeah, it's another dark pizza that probably has a good amount of whole wheat, you know, maybe they're doing some sourdough, but cool. But like, you really have to taste it.
Yeah.
To be able to fully understand.
Well, and what I think, again, it just goes back to like, yes, it has whole wheat and it is darker, but I am like, it still eats light, which is like, unfortunately, like respect a lot of the people out there making whole wheat pizza, or like pizzas with high percentages of whole grain, but they usually taste like it, you know, like you're just kind of like.
They usually taste like it. Oh,
and that's like, that's kind of the thing, you know?
Oh man.
And I don't want people to leave being like, this has a ton, like this tastes like a pizza with a lot of whole grain, and like, I don't know how I feel about that. The reality is, to me, it doesn't necessarily taste like that. It's like there's the flavor of it, but it's not the, the texture is the bigger thing, where it's not like dense and like heavier. And I think like the flavor is there in the more interesting, like, there's like maltier notes and there's sweetness and things like that. But I think what a lot of people don't like about whole wheat is there's usually like the bran has a lot of tannin, so it's like more bitter. And I think that's why a lot of people like whiter bread. But this has, like, to me, it has a nice balance of not being super tannic. And so it's still not like a bitter dough in that sense. Like, you might get the like charred spots and that might be bitter, but the bread itself doesn't have that as much, you know?
Even like 20 minutes later, that...
And if anything, 20 minutes later, you can like taste the dough better, you know? Like, you can't really taste bread. Like, we always talked about, I mean, hot, warm bread is great, but when you want to like taste bread, you should taste it cold, like cold. You know?
Yeah. I know, it's so tempting to just rip open your freshly baked dough,
exactly,
but then you're not supposed to, right? That's
I mean,
crazy.
I think you can do both. There's no reason you can't try it hot. Like, it's good hot, but...
That's wild, dude. It's not even like you're not breaking your jaw.
Yeah, right. That's what I want.
You're like, fuck yeah, dude. I've been working here for a minute. Like, it's just eye-opening. It's eye-opening, really, because I eat a lot of pizza. Like, I'm not trying to play like, I'm from New York, but no, like, legit, like, this is crazy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Good. I'm glad you like it. I can do the last one for now, and then we can go mix, and then we're done with that stuff. So,
if you want, we can just go mix.
It's up to you. It's just if you want to see one that's not a red pizza, basically. I don't know. That is your call.
Yeah.
This is kind of a cool, fun pizza, so I'm down to show it.
Please.
But
thank you.
Yeah. Do you want? Should I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you? Yeah.
Ready.
Okay. Cool. So this one, white pizza. This is the mushroom. So it kind of gets started with. I mean, a lot of white pizzas get cream as the base, and I like that. But to me, it's like cream is a pretty like mild flavor, and the fat, because it's so fatty, the fat often kind of like absorbs and almost like steals a lot of the other flavors. And I think what makes tomato sauce so great for pizza is like it's umami, but it's also really acidic, you know? So it gives it that pop, and cream isn't. So I usually make like a flavored cream for the bases. So basically when we roast the mushrooms, we keep all the scraps, and we make a mushroom cream with the roasted mushroom scraps, rosemary, red onion.
Are you talking about like the bases or whatever's left over in the bowl?
Yeah, the bases, little pieces that fall off as you're, cleaning it. Honestly, like any that just aren't like, they're still servable, but they're not like super nice, you know what I mean?
So that's what the chunky stuff is?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's in there.
Anything else?
We do red onion, rosemary, salt, pepper, and then cream. Yeah, exactly. So again, it's just like adding flavor to it. That's the goal anyway. Gets a little bit of that cheese mix, a little garlic. It gets, right now this is honchimeji and maitake mushrooms. We usually add a seasonal as well, which just while we've been playing around, I haven't been getting because they're expensive, but we usually do morels in the spring right now. We'll do chanterelles, we'll do black trumpets.
How much are you getting these for?
I mean, it depends. What was the price on these? These are pretty reasonable. The maitakes and the honchimejis are probably like...
7?
Yeah, I was going to say like 7. I think like 8, maybe 8, 9. The maitake's a little bit more. I think they're probably more like 12, 13. I mean, the morels are like 20 plus, But
is it... I can't help but think there's a little like, not saying you're pretentious, but pretentiousness based on your mushroom choice.
Sure.
It kind of is like it's a statement kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But sure, there's a little flavor, but would you argue that it's very significant?
I think maitakes have a really great texture, and like the morels too. And so I think it comes through because this is like, again, like this isn't just like a red pizza with mushrooms on it. It's like a pizza that's all about the mushroom.
It's different.
And so I think for me, you do kind of get it, but you'll see on the final product, you know?
I'm just a little butthurt because I bought trumpets for my last pop-up and nobody noticed or said anything.
Right. And you were like, it wasn't worth it.
It wasn't fucking worth the extra $4 a pound.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's fair, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's why I mix it in. That's why I don't do it with all chanterelles, you know? I don't know that people, I mean, chanterelles will sell on a menu. People will, I think, like see it and be like, ooh, chanterelles. But I agree that like, is a pizza with 100% chanterelle versus 20% chanterelle in a mix of other good mushrooms, is it 100 to 150% better? Because that's the price is going to be 100 to 150% more than what the other mushrooms are, you know? Okay. That's what I don't know. And I think because we're getting so much mushroom flavor, like from the cream is bringing in so much of that mushroom flavor too.
You don't really got to use a lot.
No, yeah, exactly. And then this one, we add a cheese, so it's that cheese mix. And then there's this cheese, which I really love, is this great cheese. You can try it on its own if you want. It's an Alpine cheese called Hornkukasa that is from this like small Swiss farm. They only use, it's like a little family, they only use dairy cows with horns, which is why it's called horn. It literally means like horn cheese. And it's really like mushroomy and umami on its own.
Oh, wow.
And so it like, to me, and it melts out like fondue basically. And so it's like, it's just a really perfect mushroom cheese. I literally go buy wheels of this at Rainbow because like no one else brings it in. There's a distributor in Chicago and they're like the only ones that bring it in. And I think it's great for a mushroom pizza.
It has a funk to it that's delicious.
Yeah, totally. A little bit of that, like, there's definitely a little bit of that, like, ammonia-y finish, too, you know, that Alpine cheeses get.
Yeah.
And these ones, I think, are a little bit, these wheels are aged, I would say, too, so they get a little more ammonia-y with time.
Super good.
But
I could, like, make that my bedtime snack. Just, like, pop one of those in my mouth, and I'll fall asleep, like, satiated.
Yeah, totally.
So good.
All right, last pie here, but let's review. And then this one gets finished with this sauce that we make. This was a little bit left here, but it's like a black garlic tamarind sauce, and so we'll get some little dots of it on there. And again, just like it really goes nicely with mushroom. It's a very unique mushroom pizza, I think. And I just like mushrooms, so I feel like this is just like very mushroom forward. And so you do kind of notice that there's nicer mushrooms on it to an extent.
Heard.
So these three are like always going to be on the menu. There's a few others that like, probably two more that will always be on, but then we'll have two others maybe that'll like change seasonally a lot. Like we usually will do probably another 2 seasonal ones. So I think when we open right now, we're gonna do one that's we're kind of in this weird mid-season time, unfortunately, for our openings. So it's like late spring, but it's too early for summer. So we're getting some of the late spring stuff, like the oniony stuff. And then, so I'm going to do one with that, and then we're going to do one with probably a summer squash one, because they're starting, I think this week or next week will be the first week where summer squash is coming in at the market. Yes.
How do you feel about,
I like it. Did you try that? It's crispy. It's nice. It's thin and crispy and soft. I like it. We were just saying we like the dough on the second day right now. We used to do this at the pop-ups all the time because the pop-ups are like, it's so hard, like the dough is not consistent for pop-ups. Like you never know exactly how long it's gonna be out at room temperature or whatever. So I had to change the fermentation so many different times to make it work for different things. And so there'd always be, which was interesting from like an experimentation perspective, but not ideal when you're like trying to serve the same product to people over and over again. and we would always have a conversation where we're like, it's pretty good today, or you know, like when something was different, we'd be like, oh, we'd go into it where I'd be like, I don't know how it's going to be today, man. Like, we'll see. And when it was good, it was always kind of a nice surprise. Right.
So you said one post-bake topping, which is the dressing.
Yeah, the tamarind.
Did you do anything post-bake for the margarita?
I usually do a little bit of olive oil on that one, and that's it. It's kind of just meant to be about the cheese, you know?
Yeah. Do you have someone who you look up to in pizza, or like which would you say shaped a lot of your pizza making?
I mean, I learned first at Roberta's, you know, so definitely like Roberta's and Falco. I learned a lot from him and still talk to him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's come to a couple pop-ups, and I saw him in New York last time I was there. So Falco definitely was an inspiration, I would say, and Roberta's pizza in general. But I don't know. I mean, I love the Badia pizza, and like his pizza is so good. I haven't been to the new one. I went when it was still just him making the pizza in the old shop by himself, and it was incredible. And definitely got the like inspiration for doing a mushroom cream from him. He does a lot of that same idea where if he's going to make a cream, he like flavors it, and that was like, I think when I first saw that, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense to me.
Is it the tamarind I'm smelling?
I mean, and that cheese. Yeah, this one smells crazy. You definitely can't like smell it through the camera, but it's...
We got a mushroom growing out of the ground there. Look at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's tight. You get it? Get the shot? Sick.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right, that's the last one of these guys.
Look at this one. This cheese didn't melt here. I'll take that one if you don't mind.
Yeah, get in there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's gonna be cool. I was gonna say it's gonna be hot.
It's gonna be really hot. I'm waiting a second.
Do you think about doing any other styles when you open up, or is this?
I mean, we're gonna do a party where we just do slices, so I am going to do bigger pizzas for that. I definitely thought a lot about doing like a Roman, like al taglio, just because I like that. That's Szechuan oil.
Dude, this is killer. I think you saved the best for last.
It's, like I said, I think it's it's a pretty good, unique mushroom pizza.
I didn't want to put it on this plate because I didn't want to change it up. The tamarind is everything. Like that finish, but also the cheeses play really nicely together. It's a funky pie, but you don't need a ton of mushrooms to be like, it has funk to it. I think every little bit on it adds a level of funkness. Almost maybe you want to call it the funk guy.
There you go. We'll have to change the name, but can't promise a royalty.
Happy to just be considered. Wow. Great job.
Yeah.
Great job.
Cool. Thank you. Glad.
Not that you need my validation or anything. I'm just amazed. What's in the tamarind again?
It's black garlic.
Black garlic.
Some regular garlic, lemon juice, a little oil, the tamarind, and some salt, and a little water to thin it out. But basically that. But it's that, Anthony has called it like, it's almost got like this mole quality to it before, which I think is fair. But I agree that it's like umami and funky the way, like the tamarind's kind of funky, the garlic is very umami and kind of funky in the way that a mushroom is, but it tastes totally different than a mushroom, but it's like doing the same thing that I feel like mushrooms can do. But then the acidity helps cut through how rich everything, I mean, otherwise it's like a cream and cheese pizza. It's pretty rich.
Yeah. Oh man, that's tight. Cool.
Let's mix and then we'll all sit down and talk for a bit and then that's it.
Yep.
I guess so. Yeah, totally.
Are these glasses okay to use?
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you guys can I interest you in a beer?
I don't drink, but Tristan.
Okay, cool. Okay. We had them come and hook up the kegs like 2 days ago or something like that. And
doing a lot of testing.
We have this green air system it's like a CO2 nitrogen mixer, which is a really nice system, and they told us how great it was, and like they went and they hooked it up, and they were like, but so the thing about this system is once you hook up, like once you tap the keg, you have about 1 to 2 weeks to drink it, otherwise it's overcarbonated. And we were like, wait, what? Like we're not open yet. And they had just tapped 3 full kegs. And we're like, fuck.
That's a lot of beer, dude.
So now everyone who's here, we're like, do you want some beer?
Are you able to just like not sell it? And like be like, hey, neighbors?
Right.
Or like...
Right, yeah, that's what we've sort of talked about. I mean, we're going to have, his birthday's coming up, so we're yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's like, I honestly... Right, like technically we can't sell it, but...
Okay, y'all, last plug. Just reliving that moment. All those pizzas that we ate. Jules was such a freaking awesome character. We mentioned later down the line, towards the end of that, we're going to be sitting down, talking pizza pop-up. That's going to be a Spotify, Apple Podcast exclusive. It's out now. Check that out. We talk about Jules's pop-up experience. So if you're into the pop-up game, you were part of the pop-up game, you're looking to get into the pop-up game, this is a dope episode, especially from someone who had just done it so recently and is now full swing into their restaurant. So lots of memories and stories to share. Check that out.
So we're back to it. But I mean, you can see already like how much stronger it is just from that rest. Like it's already like kind of smooth and like starting to give you that like enough elasticity that it's like holding its shape. So
crazy.
Just gonna mix that for about 3 minutes, and then I'll add in the oil and the salt, mix that for probably another 3 minutes, and then around there, and then that is usually, it's kind of ready around there. Sometimes it needs a little extra time. Sometimes I'll mix it a little bit on the second speed after that, but the second speed is going to get fixed tomorrow. It's not working right now on the new machine, so I'm not mixing on second speed right now. And it doesn't really need it anyways, so but sometimes it's nice.
What does doing it at second speed, what does that add? Like,
I mean, it's mostly just that this is like somewhat wet, and like it definitely helps develop it a little bit more if it needs it. And then I do find, even though like, I think that the traditional thinking would be like the more you're mixing, there's like a risk of over mixing and making it too strong. But for whatever reason, I find that when you mix on the second speed a little bit, it actually can help make it more extensible. I've just seen that a lot, and I think it's just because you're like getting the dough, like the gluten really developed, but I do find that it can help make it a little bit more extensible. With that said, this, again, like we are using softer flours in the spelt, so it's already pretty extensible, and like that dough we were just working with, stretching, was super easy. It was very extensible on its own, and that wasn't on second speed at all. So we might not use the second speed, but I want it to work. I bought a new mixer. I wanted to at least be able to mix on second speed.
So higher hydration doughs, extensibility. Could you do like if you wanted to do like Roman style? I know a lot of them use like very high mixes, fast mixes.
Yeah,
could you do that same? Can you apply the same principle to that? In theory?
Yeah. I would probably mix that style of dough pretty similarly. I would just, like, it would probably be a bit wetter. And obviously I would give it more of a longer bulk fermentation than I do with this. But I mean, I would treat it, the mix would probably be pretty similar.
How long ago did you work at Roberta's?
2014, and I left in 2016, I think.
10 years ago.
Yeah. Which is, don't remind me. Yeah, you can kind of see like how I was talking about initially, how it was like all the way at the edge of the bowl, and now it's like all the way up the hook. Like that's how much stronger it's gotten in a couple minutes, which has a lot to do with giving it that time to rest, where it's only mixed for like another 2.5 minutes, and it's so strong already, you know.
And what are you, is it mainly time-based at this point?
I mean, sort of, just because I've done this enough times to like know that this is generally what I'm looking for, but I can kind of show you. There's that 3 minutes. So, I mean, what I'm looking for is like, well, first, the other thing is you can see the color change too, right?
Yeah.
Like how much whiter it is. So that's that like bleaching effect. But I'm looking for like a lot smoother than it was. Like that initial shot was like very rough still, and like shaggy. You can see very shaggy. You can kind of see the strings of gluten that are like wanting to form, but they're not really there yet. Here we see like it's much smoother, and then I like seeing that shine. There's like a little bit of a shiny,
gloss.
like glossiness to it. Yeah, I'm seeing it like it's loose. It's not super elastic yet, where it's like it's pretty immediately sagging, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I want to get a little bit more strength than that, and so, but that's what's going to change a lot when I add the salt right now and the oil. So we're seeing a good amount of the shine and some strength, and I can tug at it in a second, but I guess I can show you that too. But yeah, I mean, for me, like, so we obviously have a lot of strength, and actually it's pretty strong already, but it is starting to tear. But pretty long dough already, which is kind of nice, and that's like definitely something that you want to see. If you like tug at it and it tears right away, that's like, you know, I'm kind of showing me that it's not quite there yet. I'm not necessarily going for it to be like fully developed, but it's gonna get mostly pretty much fully developed out of the mixer. Meaning like full development versus like medium development. Which is like something you can kind of like, if you do the window pane test, we want this to be able to stretch pretty far and thin out of the mixer is how I look at it, because I am going to give it a pretty short bulk fermentation. So it's not getting that much more strength during the bulk fermentation. It is getting some, but not as much as like a bread dough would with that longer bulk. So that goes in. I'm gonna need to help it a little bit with this smaller batch size, because the oil will kind of make it break apart a fair amount.
How many do you think you're gonna be aiming to shoot for on a daily basis in terms of pizza?
As many as we can, you know, but I don't know. I mean, I hope we can sell to start. I mean, it's so hard to say with an opening, but I hope we sell at least 100 a day. I think we could do more than that. It also depends on, like, we are going to do delivery, like takeout and delivery, and like it depends on how much we do there, because that's something we didn't do for pop-ups at all. So like busy pop-up night, we definitely would do, even at like a pretty small restaurant that seats less than what we can do here, we'd probably do between 80 and 100, I would say, with reservations. And so I would say we'll probably do 100, 120 here. But if we could do takeout and we're doing well there, and it's like 150 to 200, that'd be great. I'd be very happy. For the size oven we have, that would be great. It would be tough to do if we're at the point where we're doing more than 200 in a 4-hour period. We're gonna be really busy, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you can see it's coming back together. I'm gonna give it a little help, but it's actually mostly done what it needs to do on its own. And I mean, yeah, you can see, like, even for a relatively wet dough, like it's picked up most of the stuff. It's pretty clean from the bowl. Now I just want it to get a little like smoother and shinier, which it's on its way.
If you start hearing popping noises,
yeah,
is that telling you that it's too mixed?
Not necessarily. Like, I think that you get a lot of that on the second speed, and especially with like a wet dough. It kind of depends on the dough. If it's really wet, then I would say no, I don't think that means it's overmixed. If anything, that's like can be a good sign that you've built enough strength that it's actually like getting enough tension as it mixes and friction. Yeah, with this dough, that's not necessarily what I need, but we'd probably hear more if it were a bigger batch size and there was enough that there was like dough in the bowl that it was like slapping and kneading into. This is just such a small amount that it's like mostly just in the hook right now. You can hear it a little bit though. Yeah. And I kind of like looking for it, like it almost should get this like buttery look, like almost like when you see kneaded butter. It should have this like soft, but that's what I guess the elasticity that I look for, where it's like shiny and soft, but like looks supple, but it like holds its shape too. And if you've like made butter and you like see what the like kneading and churning looks like, I feel like there's a similarity of like when you're seasoning the butter. And I'm kind of seeing that now. I mean, it's pretty up in the hook, but it looks like it's just about ready. Cool. So we'll take a look. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna wait. It's so in the hook, but you can see like it is relaxing right away, but a little bit less immediate sag than before, but definitely relaxing, which is good because we don't want it to be super, super strong. I mean, we don't want to be overmixed, but you definitely see that like shine, which is what I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't window pane it right now just because it was just getting worked, but we can do a window pane test and kind of check that too. But this looks pretty good to me. Where again, like see it like did the sag, but then it kind of reaches a point where it's like starting to chill a little bit and hold its shape. Shiny, strong. I mean, if we can probably pull out a little bit now, but definitely stretches. It's just because it was mixing. It has more strength. It's pulling back at me more than the last time, which is what I want right now. Where if it was really long before right away, which is nice. This, if I give it 5 minutes to rest, it's going to be even longer actually. It's just that it was like just getting mixed, and so that initial strength right out of the mixer is something that I want to see. That like shows me it'll have enough elasticity coming out of the mixer. Yeah. Cool. So that's basically it. That shine that I can see right there is like that glossiness is definitely what I want to see. So that's
nice.
That's great.
Any we don't have to show it, but any special technique on balling dough that?
I could kind of show you one with one now that's not going to be quite the same, but let me pull this out of the mixer first.
Sure.
And I'll show you. It's going to be a little weird right now, I guess.
If it's not ready,
because it's not quite ready.
You don't gotta force it.
But let's say I'm just pulling back.
The head doesn't lift on this one, right?
No. But honestly, people complain about them and like how hard they are to clean. I don't really think it's that bad, but I've cleaned spiral mixers many, many times. It's just don't let it dry.
Yeah. Quick.
As long as you're not using rye flour, it's fine. But
what happens with rye?
Rye just dries like cement.
Oh no.
So you gotta make sure you clean out. If you're mixing with rye, you want to clean it right away.
What are those breads for?
That'll be like breadcrumbs.
Oh, I see.
The torn bread for the meatballs.
Were those the doughs that we didn't use?
Yeah, exactly. We have a bunch that we didn't use that we just cook off for that. And like we just need to get, it's actually like good. We've been doing this for a few days just to get a surplus of breadcrumbs because we use them to make the meatballs. They garnish the salad. Like we go through a good amount of breadcrumbs. And it's just a nice way of making sure your pizza dough isn't going in the trash.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I can do, let's pretend this dough is ready.
Well, would you normally bulk it?
Yeah, so I'll give it a bulk fermentation for sure, but...
How long?
It's been going about 2 hours, which is actually relatively short for a dough. This is only about 16% starter. So it would need probably four hours at least if I were taking it to where I would take bread, I'd probably go about 4 hours. But if we were pretending that this was a real dough, and it's not fully developed yet, so it's a little stickier. But basically I shape where I ball it into itself on the bottom, and then I use one hand, I use this hand like I'm left-handed too, so this hand's like my like guide hand, and the other hand's like squeezing the dough onto itself to build structure. So I want to see like that, like the surface tension basically, and doing it enough that I feel that tension, and then I just kind of pinch the seam, and then that's done. But I want it to be able to it should not actually feel that. Now it's not sticky because there's enough surface tension, even for a pretty wet dough. And it should hold its shape enough that it's not gonna if it has two days in the fridge, it's not like a pancake. A lot of people, if you don't build enough structure, I see these pancake doughs, and then, I mean, it's fine, they work, but if you want to get enough gas in the crust, a lot of the times, if it's too flat, you just there's nothing there basically. And that same idea, if it just doesn't have the structure when you pre-shaped it, it's not gonna have structure when it goes in the oven and you get the oven spring.
Heard. Cool.
Yeah.
What's your plan with that dough? Let it rest covered?
Yeah, I'll let it rest covered. I'll probably give it 1 to 2 folds before I divide, and then I would divide it, shape it, put it in the fridge.
Cool. We don't have to show that, but anything else that you want to show us while we're here?
I think that's kind of it. That's the dividing and shaping, which that was the same idea as the shaping anyway. So
what's the time interval for the stretch and fold?
I do about half an hour, another one in a half an hour, and then I'll let it go for. That way, if it's ready in an hour and a half, it's ready, and if it needs more time.
If you were to do a stretch and fold right now, would it be detrimental?
No, you can do it now.
Yeah. Maybe just to showcase.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, just wetting this a little bit.
Yeah. Goes a long way.
Yeah. This makes it easier. Cool. Yeah, I mean, if we did a stretch and fold, the stretch and fold is going to be, that can stay in the box, I think, probably. Or we could put it actually maybe in a one of these guys. I like doing a coil fold for this, so I come from this angle, just release that a little bit. So come from here, stretch up, fold towards itself, and then keep going. And it'll pretty much come out on its own, and then I go center, give it a quarter turn. Lots of strength.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, before we end this segment, and we're gonna go do a sit down where we talk about the pop-up and maybe some feelings about the restaurant, but I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
Question number 1, and I want to premise this with to me, you are this bread wizard. Seriously, I have never tasted a pizza crust like yours before.
Cool.
I've never seen so much intentionality in the toppings, just the whole process. I'm curious to know, what don't you know about bread that you have yet to look and do deep research on? What interests you today?
I mean, I want to find out what it is about the commercial yeast that gives it the like thinner crust, that thinner, cracklier crust. I've talked about this. It's something that Chad and I had talked about. Like, I've talked about it with other people. Like, it's a thing that I know bakers know, but I don't know. I've never heard anyone explain the science of it to me, and I'd be very curious if someone knows out there. So I would love to like just learn what's actually happening there. That's one. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like, I think I'm also always curious to like see the differences. It's why I love watching, like seeing other people's, whether it's bread or pizza, and like whether it's like a really nice crumb and not necessarily that's always open, but just like, if a bread looks really nice, I like figuring out what went into their recipe, but specifically the flours and like what properties are giving different like flour is so interesting. It's so different. Like one of the Cafe Mills that I'm getting, they have this one, I think it was, I can't remember, it's like WB02. It's like a new wheat variety that they got developed with UC Davis, like the ag program. And it's lower in protein, like it's actually only like a 10 to 11% protein, I think, but it's got more gluten-forming proteins. And so, you know, there's which like Durham, for example, semolina is high protein, but with low gluten-forming, you know? And so it's like, that's really interesting. And I would definitely like to learn a little bit more about like specific varietals, why they are that way, and how you can use them or balance them out against each other to get. I think a lot of people just stumble upon it, you know, and I do, like you said, I like to be intentional, and so I would love to like get a little bit more understanding of actual varieties and what their properties are and how to use each one.
Well, good luck with that, because I know you don't. Because I know you have all the time in the world opening up a restaurant.
Exactly.
This was very refreshing, because maybe a year ago I recorded something in Livermore with a buddy at Corner Slice.
Oh yeah, I love their pizza.
And he was just telling me, yeah, man, I try to aim for a gentler dough. But he couldn't really explain to me why.
Yeah.
And now I sort of get it.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's just like, no, just go for full gluten development and just be done with it.
Right.
But there's just like, it's a whole different product.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like, it's like I said, I mean, there's a ton. The cool thing about bread to me is like there's just 100 ways to skin the cat. You know, it's like, and not that pizza is exactly the same as bread either. Like I don't think of them as the same, but it's in that vein. And ultimately, it's like that's why I'm always pretty open about like the recipe. I don't really care. I'll share the recipe. It's not. If 100 people could make the same recipe with most dough-based recipes and probably come up with like 100 different things, you know, it's not really going to be the same. So, and like that's part of the fun, is like people sharing the knowledge and trying to figure out how to make good, like if there's more good bread, good pizza in the world, I think that's a good thing. So yeah, I mean, to me it's like, I feel like if it's helpful to like talk about it with people, that's great, and I'm happy to have people see this, and hopefully it's good, and hopefully people come eat pizza, you know?
If anything, like the person listening or watching is not in the position where they've actually tasted it. So if there's anything that they can take away without even coming here, I encourage everyone to come here, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, it's just that we don't know everything.
Yeah, totally.
And there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's
keeping interesting.
That's why we like. Unfortunately, it's a problem of mine. I play with the dough too much, because I'm always kind of like, oh, but what if we did, like, this is probably like the 10th iteration of the dough in like a year and a half, you know? And I'm really happy with it. This is like, I think it's the best one yet, but is it going to be the last one? I don't know, probably not.
Why not?
Yeah, probably not. So we'll see. But I think there's always more to learn.
Okay. Final question for you.
Yeah.
What's good dough?
Man, it's an open question, you know?
No right or wrong answer, by the way.
I mean, I think for me right now, like what's good dough in general is I'm really excited that like we're opening in San Francisco, and I think the pizza community is really great in the Bay Area right now and getting better all the time. So that's great. I think in the more literal interpretation of it, I think good dough is like you're using good flour. It doesn't have to be naturally leavened to me, but like a longer fermentation's great. But again, doesn't have to be like 3 days, 4 days either. It's like intentionality and thinking about what you like, but I think using good ingredients is like pretty important. And there's so much shitty flour out there that just trying to make sure you're trying to use the best stuff. And that's tough. Like I think for all the home pizza makers and bakers, that's sort of hard to hear because it's not super easy to get a lot of these flours. Like you can't just go to the grocery store and get Cafe Valley Mills or Cairn Spring Mill. I mean, you have to you can order them online. It's more expensive. It's not as easy to get, but I'd encourage everyone. There's a lot of local mills out there that people don't necessarily know about in regional. There's some good mills in the South. There's some good mills in the Northeast. Like there's obviously California. And if you can find out where your good local mills are, it's good to support them. They're doing a hard thing, and it's good local flour that isn't going to be treated with glyphosate. So that's a good thing,
Tight. Thank you very much for
for sure. Doughy hand.
I'll take it. If it's your doughy hand, I don't mind.
Well, there you have it, my conversation with Max Blackman-Gentile of Jules. Wow. Make sure to reach out to Max and let him know what's good dough. All of his contact information will be in the show notes. I appreciate you. I love you. Till next time. Peace.